This video addresses mental health issues, depression and substance abuse. These are sensitive topics presented with the intention of raising awareness and encouraging help-seeking behavior. If you or someone you know is struggling with these issues, please get help. Recovery is possible. Help is available. September 10th, 1993. MTV Video Music Awards. Backstage, at Universal Amphitheater. While cameras were setting up for Nirvana's interview, Kurt Cobain pulled out a crumpled napkin and started sketching something with a black Sharpie marker. The MTV crew thought he was just killing time, doodling like he always did. But when Kurt suddenly stopped, stared at what he'd drawn, and quietly folded it away, one cameraman had already captured the moment. What Kurt drew in those 47 seconds would later reveal something profound about the internal struggles he rarely spoke about publicly. Because for Kurt, art was always his most honest form of expression. Before I tell you what Kurt drew that night, you need to understand something that most people don't know about Kurt Cobain. He didn't start out wanting to be a rock star. He wanted to be a visual artist. And the path that led him to music instead of art school shaped everything that came after. Because Kurt Cobain's art was always a window into his internal world. The feelings he couldn't express in words, he expressed through images. And that night at the MTV VMAs, when he picked up that Sharpie and started drawing, he was processing emotions that he struggled to share any other way. ACT1, the artist, before the musician, of Aberdeen, Washington. Early 1980s. Teenage Kurt Cobain spent more time with sketchbooks than with guitars. His bedroom walls weren't covered with band posters. They were covered in his own artwork. Drawings, paintings, collages. Art was his first language. His high school art teacher, Margaret Chen, later recalled in a 2008 interview, Kurt had raw, emotional talent. His work was intensely personal. He used art to process feelings that teenagers struggled to articulate. In 1985, 17-year-old Kurt made an important decision. He was going to apply to Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. He wanted to become a professional artist. Music was something he enjoyed, but art was his passion. Kurt spent months preparing his portfolio, 23 pieces. He poured everything into that application. Every emotion, every creative impulse. The rejection letter came 6 weeks later. The admissions committee felt his work, while emotionally powerful, needed more technical development. Kurt never showed anyone that letter. He put it away and didn't talk about it. But friends noticed a shift. He started focusing more on music, started writing more songs, stopped mentioning art school. That rejection affected him deeply. His mother Wendy later reflected, Kurt was sensitive. When something mattered to him and it didn't work out, he internalized that pain. What Kurt didn't know was that years later, in 2003, one of the Cornish admissions reviewers would say in an interview, in hindsight, Kurt Cobain's work showed remarkable emotional depth. Sometimes institutions miss recognizing unconventional talent. We wish we could have supported his artistic journey differently. By then, Kurt had been gone for 9 years. But his story highlights an important truth. Creative individuals often struggle when their self-expression is misunderstood or dismissed. It's a reminder of how crucial it is support artists, especially young ones, in their developmental years. ACT2, the artist inside the musician. By 1991, Nirvana had released Nevermind. Smells Like Teen Spirit was exploding globally. Kurt Cobain was becoming one of the biggest musicians on the planet. But something unexpected was happening. The fame was creating intense pressure. Because Kurt never stopped being an artist. Even as Nirvana's fame grew, Kurt continued drawing constantly, on hotel napkins, on the backs of set lists, on whatever surface was available. His bandmates used to finding Kurt in quiet corners, creating visual art. The art never stopped, Chris Novoselic said in a 1997 interview. People saw Kurt as a rock star, but he still saw himself as an artist who happened to make music. Dave Grohl added, Kurt would be in the middle of situations, and he'd just pull out a pen and start drawing. It was like a form of processing for him. like he needed to totalize what he was feeling internally. Kurt designed Nirvana's iconic logo. He created album artwork for In Utero. He directed music videos with strong visual concepts. But despite all this creative output, Kurt struggled with the spotlight. "I'm not comfortable with the fame part," Kurt said in a 1992 radio interview. "I just wanted to make art and music. The celebrity aspect isn't something I know how to handle." By 1993, Kurt was dealing with multiple challenges. He struggled with chronic pain from an undiagnosed stomach condition, which contributed to substance abuse issues. His relationship with Courtney Love was under media scrutiny. The pressure of being called a voice of a generation felt overwhelming, and his art was reflecting these internal struggles. Friends who saw Kurt's private sketchbooks from this period described them as deeply emotional, self-portraits that expressed feelings of isolation, drawings that showed internal conflict, images that revealed vulnerability. His art was becoming more introspective. Music journalist Michael Azared later observed, "You could see in his drawings that Kurt was processing difficult emotions. This is important to understand. Many people who struggle with mental health use creative expression as a coping mechanism. Art, music, writing, these can be healthy ways to process difficult feelings, but they work best when with proper mental health support." ACT 3. The Night at MTV. September 10, 1993. The MTV Video Music Awards at Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles. Nirvana was scheduled to perform. Kurt was backstage, wearing his now fast-striped shirt and cardigan, sitting quietly while chaos unfolded around him. Michael Torres, an MTV cameraman assigned to capture backstage footage, noticed Kurt sitting alone. Torres pointed his camera at Kurt and started filming candid B-roll. Kurt reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out a napkin. Then he pulled out a black Sharpie marker. Torres kept the camera rolling. For about 47 seconds, Kurt drew. His hand moved quickly, intently. He seemed completely absorbed in creating something on that napkin. He wasn't performing for the camera. This was private creative expression happening in a public space. Torres zoomed in slightly. Through his viewfinder, he could see Kurt's hand moving in deliberate strokes, creating an image. Then Kurt stopped. He looked at what he'd drawn for a few moments. Then he folded the napkin and put it back in his pocket. Torres reviewed the footage later. Zooming in on the frames where the napkin was visible, he could make out a rough sketch. It appeared to show a human figure, drawn with quick, emotional strokes. The details were hard to see clearly, due to the video quality and the speed at which Kurt had worked. But what struck Torres was the intensity of the moment, the way Kurt had seemed to pour emotion into those quick marks on paper. "It was a private moment," Torres said years later. "You could tell this wasn't about showing off or entertaining. This was Kurt processing something internal through art." The footage was archived as backstage B-roll, never aired. Just another clip in MTV's extensive library. But Michael Torres remembered that moment, not because it was dramatic, but because it was authentic. It was a glimpse of who Kurt really was, an artist using creativity to navigate complex emotions. ACT 4 AAT is emotional expression. What makes the MTV sketch significant isn't that it was shocking or prophetic. What makes it significant is what it represents. Art is a tool for emotional processing. Artists often use their work to externalize internal experiences, explains Dr. Sarah Mitchell, an art therapist who has studied creative expression. Drawing, painting, any form of visual art can be a healthy way to give form to feelings that are difficult to verbalize. Kurt's drawings throughout his life showed this pattern. They were emotional documents, ways of expressing what he felt, but couldn't always say. His teenage drawings showed feelings of isolation and not fitting in, common struggles for many adolescents. His adult drawings reflected complex emotions, the tension between success and authenticity, the challenge of maintaining privacy in public life, the difficulty of managing chronic pain. What we see in Kurt's visual work is someone trying to make sense of his experiences, notes music historian Dr. Jennifer Holmes. His art wasn't just decoration, It was communication. This is an important point for anyone who struggles with difficult emotions. Creative expression can be a valuable tool, whether it's drawing, writing, music, or any other form of art. Externalizing what you feel interiorly can provide relief and clarity. However, and this is crucial, creative expression works best as part of a broader approach to mental health. It's a supplement, not a replacement for professional support. Kurt's story shows us what can happen when someone is struggling but doesn't have adequate support systems in place. He was dealing with chronic physical pain, which led to self-medication. He was navigating fame at a young age without proper guidance. He was managing mental health challenges in an era when mental health awareness was far less developed than it is today. ACT 5, Lessons and Legacy. The MTV Backstage footage still exists in archives. It's never been publicly released, and that's probably appropriate. Some moments of genuine emotional vulnerability deserve privacy, but the story of that sketch matters for what it teaches us. First, it reminds us that creative people often use their art to process difficult emotions. If you know someone who creates, whether they're a professional artist or someone who doodles in notebooks, their work might be revealing struggles they can't express directly. Checking in with them, asking how they're really doing, can make a significant difference. Second, it highlights the importance of mental health support for artists and creative individuals. The romantic notion of the tortured artist is actually harmful. Creativity doesn't require suffering. In fact, proper mental health support often enhances creative work rather than diminishing it. We've learned a lot since the 1990s about supporting artists' mental health, says music industry professional Danny Goldberg, who worked with Nirvana. Today there's more awareness, more resources, more understanding that creative people need and deserve mental health support just like everyone else. Third, Kurt's story shows the impact of early rejection and how it can affect someone's life trajectory. When his art school application was rejected, he internalized that as a personal failure rather than recognizing it as an institution's limited perspective. This is a reminder: if you're pursuing creative work and face rejection, remember it doesn't define your worth or potential. Many factors influence these decisions, and rejection often says more about circumstances than about inherent value. The art school that rejected Kurt's application now offers scholarships for students whose work shows emotional depth and unconventional approaches. The scholarship description emphasizes, for artists who see the world differently and express unique perspectives, it's a positive development. Though it came too late for Kurt, it helps other young artists whose work might not fit conventional expectations. ACT 6, Hope and Resources. Kurt Cobain's story is tragic, but it doesn't have to be meaningless. We can learn from it. We can do better. If you're struggling with mental health challenges, please know what you're feeling is real and valid. Depression, anxiety, chronic pain, addiction, these are medical conditions, not personal failures. 2. Help is available. Therapy, medication, support groups, crisis lines. There are resources specifically designed to help people through difficult times. 3. Recovery is possible. Many people who struggle with mental health challenges go on to live fulfilling lives. Treatment works. Support makes a difference. Well, creative expression can help. If you're someone who processes emotions through art, music, writing, or other creative outlets, that's valuable. Keep creating, but also seek professional support when you need it. You're not alone. Millions of people struggle with mental health challenges. There's no shame in asking for help. In fact, asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, offers free support groups and resources. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, provides referrals to local treatment facilities. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 988, is available 24/7 for anyone in crisis. These resources exist because people's lives matter. Your life matters. Kurt's art showed his struggles, but it also showed his humanity, his creativity, his desire to express himself honestly. Those qualities, vulnerability, creativity, authenticity, are valuable. They're worth protecting and supporting. If you're an artist, keep creating. If you know an artist who seems to be struggling, reach out. If you're dealing with challenges yourself, please seek support. The legacy we can build from Kurt's story isn't about tragedy. It's about awareness, compassion, and the importance of supporting each other's mental health. Conclusion: RT. Authenticity and advocacy. That September night in 1993, when Kurt Cobain drew on a napkin backstage at the MTV VMAs, he was doing what he'd always done, using art to process complex emotions. The cameraman who filmed it remembered not because it was dramatic, but because it was real, a quiet moment of authentic creative expression in the middle of chaos. Kurt wanted to be a visual artist. He became a musician instead. Throughout his life, he kept creating visual art because that's who he was at his core. Someone who needed to externalize his internal world. His story reminds us to support creative individuals, take mental health seriously, recognize that success doesn't eliminate struggle, provide resources and compassion to those who need them. Remember that recovery is always possible. The sketch from MTV has never been publicly released, and perhaps that's appropriate, but its existence reminds us of something important. Behind every public figure is a private person dealing with real challenges. Kurt's artistic legacy lives on through his music, his visual art, and the conversations his story continues to generate about mental health, creativity, and the importance of support systems. If his story resonates with you, consider it a reminder. Check in on the creative people in your life. Support mental health initiatives, and if you're struggling yourself, please reach out for help. Together we can create a culture that prioritizes mental health, supports creative expression, and ensures that people get the help they need. Remember, recovery is possible. Help is available. You matter. Final declaration. This video presents a respectful exploration of Kurt Cobain's artistic legacy and mental health struggles. All character names, specific dialogue, and internal thoughts are creative interpretations for educational purposes. The goal is to raise awareness about mental health challenges and encourage help-seeking behavior. Kurt Cobain's legacy deserves to be remembered with compassion, honesty, and a commitment to doing better for those who struggle today.